Welcome, everyone. Uh, Today, the topic is a rudimentary understanding of ragas, especially a class of ragas called the Melakarta Ragas. Okay. Um, First, I wanted to say who the intended viewers or audience for this video would be. Let me put it this way. Have you heard people say something like, oh, that song is in Karahara Priya Ragam and this one is in Chakravaka Ragam? Or on AIR, All India Radio, you would have heard someone introduce a particular kirtana. Next, we are going to hear Dr. Balamurali Krishna sing Sugunamule Cheppukonti, which is in Chakravaka Ragam and set to Rupakatalam, something like that. And you just wondered what in the world that was all about, right? Or you probably heard two people talk something like this. Bauli uses Antara Gandharam, but Bhupalam uses Sadharana Gandharam. And all of that probably sounded quite esoteric to you. And you're like, man, I have no idea what these people are talking about. And so my point is, we'll try to cover some of those kinds of basics. Now, who this is not intended for is someone who knows Carnatic music to a very deep level already. It is not for them. And one thing I'm really sort of afraid of is they might watch this video and even say, "Oh, this is wrong." Um, so, in what way would they say I'm wrong? Let me give you an analogy. If a if you're trying to teach a kid how to do subtraction, what would you say if the kid said, what is 3 minus 5? Would you say, oh, no, 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 you cannot subtract a larger number from a smaller number? Would you agree that 5 is bigger than 3, so you cannot do 3 minus 5? Was that wrong? Yeah, it was in a way wrong, right? 3 minus 5, of course you can do. It's negative 2. But then you would sort of lie. It's a white lie. Or you would give the wrong notion because exposing kids at that stage to a negative number would be such a pain. And you would say, just relax. Let's just lie and say what we said, right? That is the sense in which an expert in Carnatic music might find some of the things that I'm mentioning here to be wrong. But don't worry too much about it. Chill and let's go on. Cool? All right. The first concept you must understand, I'll try to make it as simple as possible, is a sequence. If I said there's a basic sequence containing 5 terms, that means 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Would you understand what I'm talking about? As simple as that. I'm not expecting you to do a whole lot of complicated math. A basic sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Strictly speaking, I'm not supposed to put this curly braces, but I am just in order to encapsulate those terms. Okay. Now, from that basic sequence, if I said, could you make a subsequence out of it? What? Subsequence. Meaning, take only some of the terms from the sequence and form another sequence. Cool? For instance, would you agree? 1, 2, 3, 5 would be a subsequence of our basic sequence. If you thought of something like that, wonderful. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Or you could as well have 2, 5. 2, 5 is also a subsequence of our basic sequence. And so many other subsequences you can create. Now, was that simple enough concept? That's all I'm expecting you to do. Now let's add a few more things. Now let's impose some restrictions on how you should pick a subsequence of that sequence. Cool. First restriction is the subsequence must contain exactly 3 terms, right? This one we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5 had 4 terms. That's a no-no because we need to pick only 3 terms. Similarly, 2, 5 is not okay. And For simplicity, I'm saying because our subsequence needs to have three terms, let's call them as n1, n2, and n3. That's a good way to talk about any kind of a generic subsequence. N1, N2, N3. The first term would be N1, second would be N2, and so on. Okay. Now, one more restriction. I said three restrictions. The restriction two is that three terms must be such that N1 is less than N2 is less than N3. Does that restriction make sense to you? For instance, we cannot say my subsequence is 3, comma 1, comma 5. Whoa, that's a no-no. 3, comma 1, comma 5 is a no-no because 3 is greater than 1. 3 should be, N1 should be less than N2. Cool. That's all there is to it. However, 1, 3, 5 is perfectly fine, or 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, 5 is perfectly fine. That's all I'm trying to say. Cool. Next, third restriction is make sure that N1 is guaranteed to be 1, okay? And N3 must be 5. Whoa. So, wait a minute. You are asking me to make a subsequence containing three terms, of which the first and the third term are fixed to be 1 and 5? So you mean I just have a choice for N2? Yes, that's the whole idea. And keeping in mind this restriction, N1 less than N2 less than N3, if 1 and 5 are already chosen, the only choice for N2 would be 2, 3, or 4. Would you agree? Okay, so what that means is, with all these restrictions, our first subsequence would be, first term has got to be 1, right? N1 has to be 1. So 1, 2, 5. Do you agree that would be a subsequence? Yeah, that satisfies all these conditions. N1 is 1, and N3 is 5, and N2 is one of these 2, 3, 4. Good. Can you tell me what another subsequence would be that satisfies this? If you said 1, 3, 5, just pat yourself on the back because you did a fabulous job. Give me the last one, right? Subsequence 3 would be 1, 4, 5. Wonderful. Ah, guess what? Hmm, guess what? Oh my goodness. The three subsequences we created are three different ragas. Really? Yeah, exactly. I put ragas in quotes because these are fictitious ragas. The concept of raga is based definitely on this concept of basic sequence and picking a subsequence that satisfies restrictions. All that part is definitely true. Okay. Now, so this is all there is to it. Ragas means picking a subsequence out of a basic sequence. And the beauty of this is we we can see an introduction to another wonderful term called swara. Every raga will have certain swaras. And so this N1, N2, N3 are the swaras of that raga. Cool? And the basic sequence. What is that basic sequence then? If the subsequence is swaras, and the basic sequence is what is called swarasthanas. So in our fictitious thing, we have five swarasthanas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of which we formed three different ragas with three swaras each. In each of these ragas, we had three swaras. That's it. Cool. So what is a raga? Well, I'm a mathematician. You cannot blame me if I try to define quantities. A raga is a subsequence of swarasthanas and contains a certain number of swaras or notes that obey certain restrictions, right? All I did is I just thought about what all we talked about and tried to put that into a more formal definition. Cool. I think for our level, this is perfectly fine. Okay, these are fictitious ragas. Why do I say that? Because in an actual raga, we will choose from more swarasthanas and we'll have more swaras and notes. That's the whole idea. The the need, or how should I put it? The reason I wanted to use a simpler sequence is so that you get the concept without being encumbered by the complexity of bigger numbers and stuff like that. Now, once you understood this, we can actually move on to the real raga concept. Okay, and before we do that, let's put one more restriction, especially because we are dealing with only a class of ragas or a subset of ragas called the Melakarta Ragas. We need to add one more restriction. And what is that? Each subsequence must have an ascending version and a descending version. Cool. So the ascending subsequence or Arohana, it is also called Arohana, it's climbing up, ascending, is N1, N2, N3, right? 125, 135, 145 in our case. Then automatically the descending subsequence or the Avarohana must be the exact reversal of this Arohana. That means if we had picked 1 to 5 as our raga for the ascending, of our raga, then the descending must be 5 to 1. That restriction is only for the Melakarta ragas. Okay? So good. If you need to pause and go over this stuff once again, please do that. Because now we are launching into the real ragas, okay, where you will have a few more turns in the sequence. That's all there is. Cool. So components of the real raga. So the basic sequence of the Swarasthanas would be 1 through 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 13. Now, once again, the experts may frown upon my choice of saying there are 13 Swarasthanas. Again, I understand where they're coming from, but in the way I'm trying to explain, I think taking 13 as opposed to 12, which is what they would take, would make sense. Okay? So 1 through 13 is the basic sequence. And now, as before, let's try to impose all kinds of restrictions. Restriction 1, you remember the first one in the fictitious ragas case? The first was pick 3 subsequence containing 3 terms. Now, our subsequence must contain exactly 8 terms. Let me also tell you, people will say, oh, that should not be 8, it's supposed to be only 7. There are only 7 swaras. I agree, but 8 in the scheme of things that I am trying to use, 8 would make sense. Cool. So the subsequence must contain exactly 8 terms, word and naturally N1 through N8. Restriction 2, the 8 swaras must be such that they are in descending order, N1 less than N2, strictly less than N2, strictly less than N3, and so on, all the way up to N8. Cool. So take a good look at this. Let me pause for a second. These, I hope, are fairly straightforward. Now, the third restriction is make sure that N1 is 1. Okay, very similar to our fictitious case. N5 must be 8. And N8 must be 13, right? So the positions of N5, N1, N5, and N8 are fixed, which automatically means N2, N3, N4, and N6, N7, we have a choice. We can make them to be, uh, I was about to put my foot in my mouth and say, we can make them to be anything we want. No, no, not quite. So that brings us to another restriction. So that N2 must be chosen from 2, 3, or 4. Right? That's an interesting one. And N3 must be chosen from 3, 4, 5. Cool. Hmm. Wait. Houston, we have a problem. N2 must be chosen from 2, 3, 4. N3 from 3, 4, 5. Wait, this 3, 4 and 3, 4 is showing up in both N2 and N3. So you mean I can pick N1 to be 1, good, and then N2 to be 3. Definitely it came from this set. And N3 also to be 3? The answer is no. If you did that, you are not obeying this one. You are violating this condition that N2 must be strictly less than N3, right? So the point is, if you happen to choose N2 to be 2, then rather N2 to be 3, you are forced to pick N3 to be either 4 or 5. Cool? Anyway, so keep that in mind. And N4 must come from 6 and 7. N6 from 9, 10, 11, and N7 from 10, 11, 12. Once again, don't be too worried about this overlap as long as you're making sure N6 is less than 7. 10, 11 overlapping 10, 11 in here is totally cool. Cool? Well, I'm not expecting you to memorize all these restrictions as yet, but just as long as you're cognizant of these restrictions, I'm a happy man. Okay? Now, what do we do? Good. With all these restrictions, we will have 72 subsequences or ragas. And in fact, if you check, there are 72 Melakarta Ragas. Where did they come from? The 72? From precisely what we did here. Those 72 are the subsequences that were picked by choosing things in this way. All the applying these restrictions, picking from this basic sequence, and so on. Cool? All right. And they form a special set of ragas called the Melakarta Ragas. That's what. There is another class of ragas called Janya Ragas, which are derived ragas. They are derived from the Melakarta Ragas. We are not going to cover that. We'll just restrict ourselves to the Melakarta Ragas. Okay. Now, before we come up with examples, let us recall the important choice restrictions. Yeah. So let me post this here so that I can ask a few questions of you. Questions? Yeah, I'm a teacher. What did you expect? Um, do the following two subsequences satisfy all the restrictions? Now, I had to think about this one, how to convey this. Should I ask you guys to form a subsequence or a raga? Uh, I figured, yeah, I could do that. If you want, if you're up to the challenge, please pause the video and you make a subsequence of your own. Man, if you do that, I would be impressed. So I figured another approach could be, I will give you two subsequences, and you tell me whether those two subsequences satisfy all these conditions or not. Okay. For instance, subsequence 1, hey, 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Is that cool? What do you mean, is that cool? Well, I am just asking whether whether this subsequence adheres to all the restrictions that were placed. We were supposed to have 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, that's good. So that is satisfied. N1 should be less than N2 should be less than N3. All those conditions are satisfied. Nice. N1 must be 1. Yep. N1 is this. N1 must be 1. And that's what we did. N2 apparently is 3 in our case. Is that okay? Yeah, N2 should come from 2, 3, or 4. So here, our saying that N2 is 3 is perfectly fine. N3 is 5. which came from this subset, this set. So that is cool. And 4 is 6, came from this. And 5 has to be fixed at 8, and so on. So if you check, this particular subsequence definitely satisfies all the restrictions. Cool. So thumbs up at this time. And subsequence 2 in a similar way, 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, 12, 13. Go ahead and verify for yourselves if this subsequence 2 also adheres to all the restrictions. And the answer is yes. Cool. There's a good reason why I picked these two subsequences. Yeah. So far we understood ragas in as, this is, no, good. Um, this was all totally abstract up until now, right? We talked about some stupid sequence and subsequence and all that. We never mentioned anything related to music. But I thought all this ragas was all related to some music. Where's the music in this, man? Chill. So that's what we'll do. For that, consider a portion of a piano as shown. If you're already familiar with the layout of a piano, wonderful. But if not, please allow me to mention a few interesting things on a piano or a keyboard. These are all white keys, the bottom ones. And these are all the black keys. Oh, surprise, surprise. Cool. The white keys, if you look at them, there's almost no pattern to them. Just there's a white after white after white after white. That's it. Whereas the black keys are sort of interesting. There's a set of 2 here, and there's a set of 3 here. 2, followed by 2 white keys, 3 black keys, followed by 2 white keys. So 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. That's the pattern that you see. And that is a very important pattern that helps us figure out which key is what note. Let me repeat that. These black keys having the pattern of 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 is very useful in figuring out which key is what note. For instance, this note, which is to the left of this black key, in a set of 2, to the left of this thing is called C, the note C. And if this white key is C, the one next to it is D. This is E, F, G, A, B, and back to C. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and that's it, back to C, right? And if that is the case, if the white keys are C, D, E, F, and so on, what about this black key? This black key happens to be right next to C. Would you agree? Right next to C, what key is right next to C? It's not this white key, it is this black key. And that is called C sharp. So this is C, that is C sharp. This is D, and this is D sharp, D as in David. E, interestingly, there is no E sharp. The next key is F. E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. That's how these notes, that's what these keys are. Each one is that note. C, this is note C or key of C, key C, and so on. Cool? All right, now that we got some understanding of the layout of a piano, the 13 swarasthanas can be assigned to these piano keys. That is the idea. Now we are relating the swarasthanas to the piano. Check this out. For example, we could make this C as our number 1 swarasthana. Cool? Wonderful. 1 down, 12 more to go. We need to get to 13. Which one is 2 then? Well, whichever key is very next to this key is 2. What key is next to this white key? This black key. So that black key will become 2. Cool. It is said to be half a step above 1, the key, the C key. So C sharp is half a step above C. So that is our 2 in the, so that is the Swarasthana 2. How should I phrase it? The Swarasthana 2 is occupied by this black key. Maybe that's a better phrasing. Anyway, and 3 would be whatever is right next to this 2. So that means this is 3, the third Swarasthana, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on. Cool? Now, is that simple or what? Right? As simple as we started by picking one particular note on the one particular key on the keyboard on the piano and said that is 1. Good. Automatically 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 13 we were able to identify. Cool. Now we could have chosen differently. For example, we didn't have to take C as our 1. We could have taken this key as 1. Now, if you say, what is that key, man? Okay, to tell you the truth, I don't remember. One look at it, I cannot tell what key this is. One look at the keyboard or piano, I can tell which one is C based on this. Hey, that's the one to the left of this 2 set black keys. So, okay, hang on. What key is that? Hang on. So this is C, D, E, F, G, A. Ah, that is A. That's how I figure out. Because I don't have that amount of familiarity with a piano. Someone who is probably can tell you, oh, are you kidding me? That's A, right? One look at it, they can tell. Not me. Anyway, so if we were to make this as our Swarasthana 1, A as our 1, automatically 2 would be this A sharp, right? Because that's right next to 1. Similarly, 3 would be this, 4 would be this, 5, 6, all the way up to 13. Cool? So what is the basic idea that we are trying to drive at? We can take the Swarasthanas that we talked about and assign those Swarasthanas on the keyboard, for which our starting our starting number 1, Swarasthana 1, can be placed just about anywhere on the keyboard. Now, I said just about anywhere. Let me clarify what I mean by that. Earlier, we started by taking this particular key as our 1, right? And I said that is C. Hey, if you made that as 1, could you have couldn't you have picked this as 1? Yeah, we could have. But then notice this is also a C, right? It's also to the left of this black key in the set of 2. So this is also C. So realistically, if you took one to be this C or this C, it doesn't matter. You're not picking a different key. You're picking the same key of C if you were to do that. What that means is we could have picked C sharp as our 1. That's entirely possible. Or D as our 1, or D sharp as our 1. That way, we will have 12 different values for our 1. 12 different choices, maybe instead of values, I should say. 12 different choices for our 1. Once that Swarasthana 1 is picked, of course, the 2, 3, 4, 5 should be adjacent to each other. That's the idea. Cool? All right, that's another interesting concept that we went through. Now, let's see what do we have. Good. Now that we introduced the piano and talked about the swarasthanas, let's try to relate the piano to the subsequences or ragas that we had earlier. Earlier, we had subsequence 1 contained these particular swaras or notes 1, 3, 5, 6, 8. Now, in the key we chose, that is in the way we assigned Swarasthana 1, which one was that? First one was the C. So this is our C, this is our 1, and so that is the first term of our subsequence, or the first swara of our raga, and the next one, N2, must be 3. Can we figure out which one should be that 3? Well, if this is 1, the black key next to it is 2, skip that, and this white key must be 3. So we do pick this one, 1, 3. Good. Now 5 is what we need to pick. So 3 next to this is black key, 4. Ignore that. Come to this next one, which is 5. So we pick 5. 6. Skip 7 and go to 8. Skip 9 and go to 10. Skip 11 and go to 12. And finally 13. Ta-da! Right? So this raga, if you want to play this particular raga, you have to, and if you start, now this is important. If you want to play this raga, and if you happen to pick your first swarasthana to be C, then the rest of the notes would be the adjacent white keys, right? This key and the next white key, next white key, dun 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 dun, right? That's it. And that is, by the way, called the Dhira Shankara Bharana Ragam or Shankara Bharanam. Now, isn't that interesting? So there is a little more meat on the bone right now. So this is Dhira Shankara Bharana Ragam. And can you figure out the Maya Malava Gaula Raga if I said it is our second subsequence? Just go through the same process, choose the same key for 1, and instead of 1, 3, we need to do 1, 3, 5, we need to do 1, 2, 5, and so on. So clearly, if this is 1, we should pick 2, and then skip 3, skip 4, pick 5, 6, skip 7, pick 8, pick 9, 10, 11, 10, 11, skip 12, and 13. So if you were to play these notes, you are playing the Maya Malagala Ragam. Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. Right? That would be Maya Malagala Ragam. By the way, when I did the Sarigama Padanisa, and then notice how I came down. Sani, Sani da pa magare sa. That is the Avarohanam or descending. I Sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. That's the idea. Cool. So this is the Maya Malagala Ragam. Okay. Just for kicks, let's see what keys get used in Shankarabharanam if we are in a different key. Okay, let's recall that Shankarabharanam was the subsequence 1, 3, 5, 6. Earlier, we had picked our 1 to be C. What if we were to pick 1 to be A? Then 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 would be these. Right? Now notice, they are no longer the adjacent white keys. So it's entirely possible that you could play that same raga on a different key, right? Instead of key of C, you are doing it on key of A in this time. And That is something interesting, which is no longer the set of adjacent white keys. That's the point. All right. Uh, hmm. Think maybe that is a good stopping point for this one. All right. All righty. Thank you guys. I'll do a part two after this one. Cool?